Hello everyone, Darius from Self-Archeology here, and today I want to talk about trauma, specifically about a definition of trauma that I found a few days ago. So I was thinking about new ways how to explain trauma to people, because most people don't get it, some people do get it, most people out of those who do get it don't really get it, or they get it on a certain intellectual level, but they don't have a deeper understanding of what it is. So I was looking for new ways how to explain this phenomenon to people, and I found a definition of a world-renowned trauma expert, Gabor Maté. I refer to his work in my book, Human Development and Trauma, How Our Childhood Shapes Us into Who We Are as Adults. And his definition of trauma, here I will be using his definition of trauma from an interview for humanwindow.com. And he defines trauma there as follows. Trauma is a psychic wound that hardens you psychologically, that then interferes with your ability to grow and develop. It pains you, and now you're acting out of pain. It induces fear, and now you're acting out of fear. Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. Trauma is that scarring that makes you less flexible, more rigid, less feeling, and more defended. So what does it all mean? It means that when you think about trauma, it is useful not to focus so much on what exactly happened to you physiologically. For example, if you have been raped or beaten, of course this is traumatic, but how you can think about it to understand the effects of what happened to you on your life is to think about how this affected you psychologically, how it affected your psycho-emotional core, your psyche and your emotional apparatus. So if you've been, for example, raped, how did you feel? How did it affect you afterwards? How did you feel before that? So you probably felt, or a person in that situation, you can imagine if you haven't been raped, you can empathize with a horrible situation without actually having to experience that yourself. So if you imagine a person who has been raped or beaten, how did they feel? Well, they probably felt helpless because they, at that moment, didn't have control over their bodies, over their environment, and they were in the mercy of that person who raped them or beaten them. They felt betrayed, maybe. They felt lonely because nobody helped them in that situation, assuming that was the case. Maybe they felt very angry because their boundaries were crossed in such a fundamental way. So we feel a certain way when we experience certain situations. And so what was the effect of that experience? Well, if you experience trauma that is significant enough, or if you experience a reoccurring trauma, or you live in an environment where micro traumas are present, or even traumas are present, and it lasts for a long amount of time, in all of these cases, you experience certain effects of trauma. So those emotions that you feel when you are traumatized, they change your life, they change your psyche, they change your emotions, and they even change your thoughts. So you might become overly scared of people, or you might become overly aggressive. You might develop certain false beliefs that maybe all people are dangerous, or all men are dangerous, or all women are dangerous, or that you are unlovable, or that you deserved abuse. And that is what Gabor Maté talks about in his definition of trauma, that it's what trauma does to you. It's not necessarily what happened to you, but what happened inside of you because of what physically happened to you. So when you think of trauma, try to think about all of that. How did that affect you emotionally? How did that affect you intellectually? What beliefs did you develop because of that? What emotional responses, what emotional problems did you develop because of your trauma? And I will talk about healing from trauma in my future videos. But I just want to say that everyone has been traumatized to a certain extent. Trauma is a spectrum, and some people are more traumatized, other people are less traumatized. All of us are traumatized in different ways. Some are similar to each other, while others are less similar. Trauma is complicated. People experience trauma mainly when they are growing up, but also we are affected by the society that we live in. And as you probably have noticed, we live in a highly dysfunctional and traumatized society. So all these traumatized people grow up and they form a society, they form neighborhoods and smaller societies and groups, and they act out that trauma in various different ways. So trauma is acted out on a personal level. So you act out your trauma in different ways in your life, in your relationship with the people in your life, with yourself, for example, at work, or when you're just by yourself, how you see yourself, how you take care of yourself, or at work, in your romantic relationships. And other people do the same. So traumas interact with each other. They are interrelated, and when you interact with others, that interaction in itself can either make your trauma worse, or it can create other traumas and micro traumas. So it's very complex. I maybe will explain that more in the future, but in this video I just wanted to talk more about how you can look at trauma in order to understand it affects a little better. So that's it for this video. Oh, and I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who commented on my last video, the psychological analysis of the Joker movie, and who sent me private messages and emails about it. And I got a few questions related to the movie and my analysis, and other unrelated questions, and I have like a long document with a lot of questions, and maybe I'll do a few Q&A videos in the future. Anyway, that's it for this video. Stay safe and see you in the future. Bye.